Hi, I'm Kylie Canning. Welcome back for Season 2 on Lead with Courage. Illuminate Leadership acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, which we would call this podcast the Yagara and Terrible People. We pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging.
Welcome to Lead with Courage, the podcast that celebrates the bold and inspiring stories of leaders making a difference. We're your hosts, Andy and Cherie Canning, and together we'll dive into the minds of the trailblazers, the risk takers, and those who embrace life with a growth mindset. Today we welcome to the podcast Kylie Chivers from The Feminine Connection. This woman is an absolute powerhouse, and it's no surprise she's also a speaker at Ignite 24. I first met Kyles in 2003, and since that day, she has always been a role model in my life. I can't wait for you to hear her stories and her share the lessons of the importance of living and working through your feminine energy. Enjoy the conversation. A huge welcome, Kylie Chivers, to the Lead with Courage podcast. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm very excited about our chat we're going to have today. We've got some good questions around where you are now, the founder of The Feminine Connection, what you're offering to women and men in their lives, but really want to get behind who Kylie is and hear a bit of your story. Before we jump into all of that, can I ask you the question we always ask our guests, which is, what does Lead with Courage mean to you?
I did have a good think about this question because it's a great question. And obviously it's quite a personal question. And for me, to lead with courage is to lead firstly is to lead your own life with conviction and with passion, and have the courage to follow what makes your heart happy. So I think it's not so much just leading others, but to lead by example, to lead your own life first, to lead your life in a way that fulfills you emotionally, spiritually, financially, whatever that means, but to have the courage to do what it takes to follow your passion, which is not always easy. And that's something that, I'm proud that I've certainly tried to do.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Well, for the listeners, I've known you since, a little while now. We've known each other a long time. And the first time I met you, I think I was 21 years old.
Wow.
A couple of days ago. Not
yeah, not that long
a little
ago.
while ago. But that is something true for you that I see through your life around finding that passion. And yeah, it's beautiful. So I'm really thrilled to introduce your story and get to know you with our listeners and share about your life. So it's a big question to ask someone, who are you, in a few minutes. But can you share us a little bit of who is Kylie Chivers, your career, and what's led you up to this point?
Who I am is a passionate person who likes to stand for what I believe in. I don't always have the right answers. I don't always have the right thing, but I'm not afraid to go out and find it. I believe in asking lots of questions and learning about different things in life. So my journey of my career has been very, very, pretty full on, I guess, for some people. My first business was at the age of 19. So my first love and passion was creating a business and creating businesses. And then after that, it went straight into my love of property and development. So property investment, residential, and growing a massive portfolio over many years. So I'm still very much in that world, and I just loved it. So learning it wasn't something that I was brought up with. So it was something that I took on and learned and grew over many years, and went into more business. I was married young, so I got married at the age of 22 and have 3 amazing children. So who I am is a passionate woman that stands for what I believe. I'm a businesswoman, I'm an investor, I'm an educator, and a lover of life.
I love hearing that. And from an early age for me, meeting you, you were someone that I didn't have a lot of female, I never had a big sister or anything, and female role models near my age but a little bit older to look up to. And for me, you were it from the minute I met you. I think your energy for life and giving things a go. And as you're saying about learning, I remember being around in those times for you and meeting you when you were pregnant with your first child, and then seeing you become a new mum, and also open all the property. My gosh, I used to sit there and go, you own how many places? Like, it was just mind blowing, but just your growth and your desire, your ambition, whilst at the same time being so family orientated and just full of love and joy. It's been a pleasure to observe it and watch it. You and I haven't really seen each other as much over the last little while in person. And so the last few years you've had some, I guess, take us on the personal journey for you, personal professional journey over the last period of time for you that really has led to where you are with the feminine connection.
Yeah, certainly. So as I mentioned, I was married at the age of 22. So 7 years ago, just over 7 years ago, that marriage came to an end, and it was a very challenging time. So after 23 years with the same man, we got separated and divorced. It was under quite traumatic circumstances. He went outside the marriage for intimacy and connection and whatever it was he was seeking. And to me, it was devastating. It was, I have to say, one of the hardest times of my life. And it was devastating because when you are such someone that tries and grows and learns and always challenging myself, to have something that was so important to me fail is how I saw it. I failed, and it was really unsettling. And to sort of overnight, everything that I knew and everything I thought was true and real felt like it was turned upside down overnight, and it brought me to my knees. Like, I have to say, it was the angst that I felt in that time straight after. I didn't know. I was so lost there for a little bit, and I didn't know what to trust. I didn't know what to believe. I didn't know who I was. I self-doubt. I felt worthless. I felt all these terrible things as a result of how everything ended. It was awful. And, my beautiful close friends and family that were with me saw me. And I remember one of my best friends at the time, not at the time, but years later, said to me, I've never seen anyone like, she said, you were broken. You were broken. And Brene Brown says it so well, angst, it comes for your bones. And that's how it felt. Like I remember just being, on the ground, just unable to stand because everything I believed in, thought was important, and we're such family orientated. And, I came from a family that had gone through divorce with my parents. So I was really fought hard for not to be that. And then it's still to happen on my time. And I just really took that very personally. And so that led me to go on to a real self-reflection and self-discovery phase. So even though I was lost and felt all these terrible things, when I think about it now, the self-talk that I had at that point was just crazy, but it was real. And I felt like, how I must be so worthless. I must be so bad, because why would a man with 3 kids walk away from that, and it must be me, like, what's going on? So with that deep dive that I did in self-reflection first and then self-discovery, I really, for the next 12 months, really took on, firstly, the accountability of what happened. Like, what happened to us? What broke us down? Like, 2 people that I knew loved each other, 23 years together. Yeah. And we did business together. We did, 3 family, and we, a lot of the time, had a good time.
Never in a million years, knowing you from 2003, it's when I'm just trying to work that out, like in your earlier periods of your marriage. And also, you'd gone through big things together too. Like you'd experienced cancer and recovering from cancer in that time.
Yes.
That's huge. Like to go through all that together. And seeing the ups and downs of, even with the property, okay, yep, things are booming, okay, little challenging times, boom again, and the way that you guys would come together. Never in my wildest dreams would I have expected from what I saw on the outside. We never see on the inside, and you don't know the intimacy of people's relationship. But I would have never in a million years expected to hear that that it ended. So yeah, just quite shocking.
Yeah, it was. And I was obviously in the inside, so I knew that our intimacy had eroded. I knew our connection wasn't what it was. But I still believed that we would be okay.
Yeah.
That when we got more time, we would spend time on it. We would pick up our date nights again. We would, anyone that's been together for that many years knows that the ups and downs that comes in a long relationship. And so for me, when we were at that down again, I just thought it would just be another.
You'd come back up.
We'd come up again.
Yeah.
We were that couple that would bounce back.
Yeah.
And I underestimated, that the impact that disconnection and a lack of intimacy can have. So it's only so long you can limp along.
Yeah.
I kept thinking we would limp along. We were very busy at the time. We created a big property, a big housing company.
Yes.
And, we were delivering over 1,000 properties across Queensland, and it was big, and the pressure on both of us was huge, and the disconnect and me thinking it'll be okay, we'll get there. The kids, 3 kids in the middle of all that, it's just crazy, right? So the pressures and everything else, I think, and not understanding the roles and the intimacies of particularly, and this is the biggest thing. So the next 12 months of my journey of after picking all this up was I went on a big discovery, as I said, all around the world really, and learning from some of the greatest. So Tony Robbins, Esther Perel, Alison Armstrong, Keith Cunningham. I don't know if some people don't know these people. If they don't, please look them up. These are the different people that I seeked, and I went and saw, them in person or in different events in different places all around the world. So did a lot of Tony Robbins events for the next 12 months and really immersed myself into how do I turn this around? How do I learn from what I've done, and how do I just get myself back on track? I was determined not to be bitter and twisted.
Yeah.
Because so many people can go that way after a divorce, particularly when someone has an affair, as in my case.
Yes.
It can be very easy to be the victim and to blame. Absolutely. And don't worry, there was times that I did feel that way, but I really was very committed to saying, no, there's no point in that. It's a waste of energy. I'm better off just moving forward.
Do you know how did you come to that? Like, was that just innately who you are and the way you see life, or was there a moment where you went, actually, I've got a choice? Was there a conscious choice?
It was pretty clear right from the beginning. From the beginning, when it was apparent that he didn't want to work on it at all. Like, at first you think, we're going to work on this. It's going to be,
Yeah.
But when I realised all the things that had happened that I didn't know about and the different things, it became very apparent that it wasn't a situation that could be, I didn't want to work on, but he didn't want to work on it either, which is also another slap kind of in the face, because when people split up, they go, don't worry, he'll see his way and come back. He never did. And that's another little, it must be me, right? It must be me. Something I must be terrible. And so I really...
Not worth fighting for.
Not worth fighting for, and all those different things. So... But I knew in the back of my head that it was not right. I knew that it wasn't right. I had a belief, but I needed to reconnect to my own belief. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to be bitter, because I knew that both of us let the intimacy go.
Yeah.
Yes, we're all accountable for our own choices at the end, and I'm not excusing that. There's definitely ways that you can treat someone, and I wasn't happy, and I certainly didn't deserve the treatment. However, I can understand it.
Yeah, okay.
And even have a little bit of compassion for that. So yeah, it was just about moving forward. That's, next. It's
a good Ariana Grande song about that. But thank you, next. Yeah. So just one step, one discovery, reflection, and then discovery. You just said that. What's the difference? How do you see the difference of self-reflection and the self-discovery?
The self-reflection for me, was kind of looking at about kind of the past. So reflection is past and present. Like what is it? And let's get real. Like, let's take all the biases off and everything like that. Let's just look at what actually happened. What part did I play? And so that's the reflection. So to look at it really what it is, not what it could have been, what it should have been, what it once was, all these things that we I think sometimes can fantasize about.
Not better than it is, not worse than it is.
No, just
what
as it is. Exactly. Because without that clarity, it's hard to know what's next.
Yes.
Because, we had a lot of goals and dreams and most of those were together. I mean, we've been together since I was 19. I don't even know what was my dreams.
Yeah, wow.
I had to
separate.
So that's where the discovery part comes in. It's like, okay, I've got a clean canvas now. I've got these 3 amazing children, so that's my priority. But apart from that, I get to, what do I want? What do I want for the rest of my life? I've been given this second chance of creating another whole part, another whole relationship. And that started getting me excited again. Oh, I get to have another first kiss. I get to have another, all these things that wouldn't have been there had we stayed married. So I was starting to look at the positives.
Yes.
And, I was now a 44, 45-year-old woman. When I was single last, I was 19. So the world's very different.
Very different. And how we meet people in this world now, also very different.
It was such an awakening and such a discovery phase. And I needed to discover that because I wanted to be ready for if and when a next serious relationship would come along. I wanted to be whole and complete within myself.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So that was important. So that's why the discovery part. I had to get out there and, true in my style, I did it big, jumping around Tony Robbins and
literally. I mean, I remember you tell us what the details were, but my memory is that you're on the Tony Robbins Platinum package, and what I saw via say social media is you were all over the world. This is obviously pre-COVID when everything was in person still, and you were at events with Tony up the front everywhere, all over the world.
Yeah, I was on stage with him dancing. They have this finance trip, which is only for their platinum only. So it's much more exclusive than his big events. And this particular one was in Sun Valley, and he's got his own, his own ski lodge there, his own house.
Yes.
And so we were there. So the last night was a party at his house.
In his hot tub.
Well, it's
for context. Yeah. There are a lot of people in that hot tub, including his wife.
Yes. Yeah, 15 people. But it's not a hot tub, it's a natural hot spring.
Oh, wow.
So it's in the rocks and it's beautiful.
Oh,
and
wow.
He was challenging everybody to jump into the cold lake and then do the cold plunge and then back into the hot. So him and I and about 3 other people did that together, and I've got these amazing photos of us jumping in this, it's snowing on us, jumping into the cold, lake that was still kind of moving.
Wow.
And then jumping in the hot, into the hot natural springs. So that was a pinch me moment for sure, just sitting here like what's going on?
Oh, g'day, Tony.
Hi, Tony. He scooped me and one of the other girls up like his big arms and was sitting practically on like his lap. It was the most bizarre thing, but yeah, not weird or anything like that. His beautiful wife's there and his family, like it's not like that at all, but it was just so much fun and a pinch me moment. So, but yes, traveling around the world, doing his business events, because I really wanted to make sure that business-wise that I could get myself on track, because I end up taking over his part of the business, and I had another business partner as well. So I really want to make sure that I was adding value, because I didn't want to lose that. I needed to keep something that I knew in my life. So I really wanted to make sure that I added value and I upskilled myself, because that needed to keep growing and keep doing things, because I wanted to provide for my kids. I needed to be that. So that's what I kind of focused on. And yes, I was fortunate to have that opportunity, and it really was
create it.
Create it,
yeah,
and have the resources to pay for it.
Yes.
And it did. I met incredible people from all over the world and had these great experiences. But at the same time, hours and hours and hours of learning.
Yeah, I was going to say,
so much hours.
It sounds that fun part, but that is deep inner work, and that is never easy. That's never fun. That maybe jumping in the water is fun for a moment, but that kind of inner work is
facing your demons and your thoughts. In these for like week-long events. Putting yourself through that, when for the same money I could have gone and sat in a resort somewhere, but you're making a choice to be in that room because, as I said, I had to keep going, and I wanted to be a stand for my kids and for people around me to say that yes, you can get knocked down and things can happen, but you know, what you do next is really up to you.
It's incredible. I was always curious about, did you get much knockback from people saying about being selfish or doing that for you, when obviously for the kids there's some big changes there for them too?
Yes, a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit. And certainly some people, even that were close to me, there was sometimes a little bit of a snide remark or a little bit of a sort of a bit of judgment, I felt. But and I didn't need it because I already had the self-judgment. You know, I already had the mother guilt, was loud and clear. Every single time I got on a plane, I would cry for the first half an hour. Every single time. Every time I took off, you know, it was – you know, it was there. What sort of mum am I? I should be there. What am I doing? You know, all of that stuff would be there. But then I'd be like, no, it's the oxygen mask. I have to be good first. And when I think about it, you know, social media makes you look like you're away all the time. But when you worked it out, it was only X amount of weeks over the whole year.
Yes.
You know, and now it's 7 years on. I can still only say it was X amount of weeks over 7 years. Like, you know.
Yes.
And every other time that I'm home, I was home. I'm there at night and I'm there in the mornings and I'm doing as much as I can to be at the school stuff. And, you know, yes, occasionally you might miss one, but I did the best I could.
Yeah.
And I needed the kids to know that. And, you know, maybe it was the right thing, maybe it wasn't. I guess I'll never really know, but it's what I needed, and I am a human and I am a woman, and I think as parents we can forget that.
Yes.
You
know, I mean, from the outside, I would go to say it's absolutely the right thing, because then it's the trajectory to get you where you are now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just kept thinking, if I didn't do this, what would have been the alternative?
Totally.
If I was the way I was in the first 3 or 4, maybe the first month, when it first all happened, if I was still in the corner, crumpled on the ground, crying and whatever, you know, thinking all these terrible things about myself. Like, what good am I as a mum then? Like, what good am I? Like,
well,
you know,
not much at all. And that's why I do ask, because for me, when I'm seeing it, I think it's the greatest thing ever. I really do. And I often, whether it's a year-long program, whether it's a 1-week program, whether it's one night away that people gift themselves, and even saying gift like it's got to be some big thing, you know, I think particularly for women, all people, but particularly for women, to actually say, no, I've got to do this for me, and then not have to justify it and not have to worry about then the guilt and the expectation or the judgment coming around. But that, I was curious about what kind of feedback you may have had, because I think in society people are quick to judge. But I agree with you. What if you never did that? Like, where would you be now? Where would the relationship with the kids be now? Where would you personally be in your own life now? Like it's almost a frightening thought, isn't it? Because if you don't break that cycle, if you don't break that state that you're in, then nothing's going to change.
And it was probably I guess, was it the right year to do it? Because like you said, the first year is always the toughest on the kids. But again, 2 of the kids were going to their dads. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm like, well, they're with their dad on those weeks. Like,
yes, that's right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're not, I haven't put them out in the street for adoption. You know, they're with their dad.
Yes.
So that's fine.
Yes.
Good opportunity for him to be bonding and doing the stuff that he does. So I'm okay. However, my eldest daughter didn't go. She had her own stuff going on that she was trying to get through. So I think that was tough. She definitely that was probably the biggest impact was on her.
Right.
Now I do have some feelings and thoughts about, had I done it differently, would it be different? I don't know. I can't answer that. All I can say is keep talking to her and letting her know that that was the best that I could do at the time.
Yes.
And hope that she can draw that that's the strength and that's what I needed, and that I was, you know, every other time I was trying to be there as much as I could for her, and you know, and I was, you know. So, and you know, people would look and go, oh yeah, but for work, you know, some people work at night, some people work all different things and don't see their kids. I still saw them all of the time, you know.
Yes.
I was lucky because I worked for myself.
Yes,
I had flexibility to go to the sports things and this and that, and so, you know, I just think law of averages. You go, okay,
So
over
true.
20 years of, my eldest daughter's 20, over 20 years, 1 year that was probably a bit rough, and it's probably a hard year to be that way, but,
Yeah. But then I just come back and go, you needed that for you. And bravo for listening to that for yourself. I feel like getting out of your own comfort zone and realising
and I was
your
lucky
change.
too, because I had enormous support from my family, my sister and my brother and my mum and my dad, and they're just been so supportive in helping. So the times when I needed help with the kids and stuff like that, they were so much there, and I'm really grateful for that. And it takes a village, right?
Yes.
And so I really called on my village.
Yes.
And they were there, so that was good.
It's beautiful. And then how often I think thinking about sometimes people don't call on their village, they don't ask for the help or don't put their hand up and ask for that support. Was it easy for you to do, or was it challenging?
Easy. Usually it's fairly easy, but sometimes it's hard if you feel like, okay, I've asked too much now. I've asked too much or whatever. And I just try and be upfront with them and say, look, I'm just going to ask if you can't, it's like, seriously, there's no guilt trips if you can't or whatever, but this is what I'm thinking. And I just try and be as honest as I can.
Yeah.
And try and obviously do what I can back, so how do I give back in different ways? So I think it's a beautiful exchange. And I believe they all know that I would do anything for them, and I do in different ways. I'm sure you've seen that at different times. And
absolutely.
And I've helped them in various different ways as well. So I think, again, it's that village scenario, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful because it's all that's enabled me to be where I am today. And so, it was such a journey, but an important one.
It's so beautiful to hear. And yes, I have seen that of you, and I believe as well about karma, for so long you probably weren't someone who was receiving, you were giving so much. And then when it was your turn to say, okay, now I need a hand, that it just goes around. I think the energy of that is just so beautiful, so beautiful. So let's fast forward 7 years from the marriage breakdown, or what words do you use? Marriage.
Or breakdown.
Breakdown.
Yeah, breakdown's good. Yeah.
It's really funny because I remember just
Demise.
on a side. What's that?
Demise.
Demise.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, we could open this can of worms up. We won't. The word when you said before about failure, it's really interesting. I know when I went to Tony Robbins in 2011, there was something that really came out for me around like there is no failure, it's just experiences, or that they were the words that I took from that kind of sentiment. But I remember originally going, I'm such a failure, I've failed marriage, and I've really distanced or disconnected from that language now. But I heard you say that in the beginning thoughts as well. And it's just such a powerful understanding that it's not necessarily a failure. That's why I'm saying about the marriage breakdown. Is it a breakdown, or what language do you use? Because the words we use really matter.
Yeah. And I think it's just at the end. It was the end of that chapter.
Yes.
We had, and that's where you get to, when you do the work, and I encourage people to do the work to get through it, like to actually go through those feelings. Don't just brush them aside and put them under the carpet, because they will come back. Like to process them, be okay with that grief, because you are grieving. In my case, I was grieving my best friend. Seriously was my soulmate best friend up until that point.
Yes.
And it wasn't just the end of the marriage, but as I said, there was some things that happened at the end that I was just like, how do you do that to your best friend? I couldn't understand. I couldn't reconcile in my brain. Nothing could reconcile other than I deserved it, or I was worthless, or that's the only thing that would make sense.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, but then when you do the work, that you realise, well, it's actually not about you.
No.
At all.
Yes.
And somebody does things because they're feeling so desperate, or they're so lost, or they're so lonely or disconnected, and all those things. So when you can get enough clarity around it, and you can really, like you said, disconnect from certain words
and almost observe it rather than be in it. Yeah.
So that's the full story. So if you can do the work and then move on cleanly and go, okay, that was beautiful for what it was, and I've got these 3 beautiful children, and I've got all this amazing experience, and I've got the experience, this incredible despair and grief, which when you get to experience the whole spectrum of being a human, if you skip through life and just kind of look at the good stuff, you need to experience the whole spectrum.
Yes.
Even though it's not nice at all at the time, when you do, then you know the depths of how strong you are.
Yeah, and it's that expression, I think, of, the lower the lows that you experience, the higher the highs can be. And that, the balance of the two one enriches the other.
And you just, your strength of character, your resolve, all of that gets better. You know what you're capable of. And when it gets called upon again and in different situations, you go, no, I've been through that.
I've been there.
Come on.
Yes,
come
totally. On. I agree. And every time you go through another experience, then it's stronger and stronger, like the scar tissue, isn't it? Yeah, incredible. So
7 years later.
7 years later. And now, you want to go through personally or professionally where things are at now?
I'll go personal first.
Yes, beautiful.
So personal now, I'm very happy to say that I'm engaged to an incredible man. We've been together for a number of years, and he's just amazing. So the amazing part about having a next, second act, if you want to call it that, or next chapter, whatever. I'll call it an act. It's more than a chapter. And it's really once you get to figure out what you want in life. And I went through this, and this, again, part of all the training and learning that I did was write down a list of what, attributes and characteristics that I wanted in this person when he was to arrive. But on the flip side of that is working on who I need to be to attract that and to be able to sustain the relationship I want. So, we got to write out our relationship vision. And so I remember writing that out at, I think it was Date with Destiny, probably about a year before I met Brett.
Wow.
And so I wrote it down, and if anyone that's been to a Tony event, you get all pumped up and excited. Then you're just like, right, sit down and, you ride 100 miles an hour while you're in that state.
Yeah.
So you come up with this. Well, for me, it just comes out onto the page. You don't even know I didn't even know what I wrote really. And I kind of just, wrote all these things. So your ideal vision of your relationship, what do you do? Where do you go? What do they look like? How do you act? It's as much detail as you can about what that looks like. So I remember writing all this out and putting it into the book, and then, putting it in the bookcase. That was it. And then so about a year later I meet Brett, and then probably about 3 or maybe 4 months into the relationship, I'm tidying up the bookcase and the book falls and the piece of paper falls out.
No.
Yeah, and I pick it up and I'm like, oh.
Seriously?
So I sit down and I'm reading it and I'm like you could have, I couldn't have written it. I couldn't have created.
Well, yeah, you did.
Well, I did write it. I don't remember writing it.
You're in the Tony bubble.
I was in the Tony little bubble.
Yeah.
And when I read it, it took the air out of my out of my lungs, because I was just like, oh, this is us. This is us. This is what we've created. This is what I've manifested, if you want to use that word, or created. I brought it into being, and it was so much so, get this, and I don't even remember the detail I wrote, but I wrote that we went jet skiing together, because it was something I used to love doing. So it wasn't that left of field, but I wrote that. I mean, you've only got so many lines on the page, but it must have been that important that I had to put it in there. The very first date Brett and I went on was jet skiing, because he's got a jet ski, he talked me into taking me out on this ride. And I'm like, seriously, did he find this piece of paper and get notes?
How do I manipulate this situation?
How do I win this woman? Jet ski, that'll get. So
he went and bought it the day before. He didn't even have it.
But everything, the way that he interacts with my children, that was really important to me. I needed, and now he'd never been married and never had kids, even though he's the same age as me, a little bit younger. Just had to keep my cougar status there. But
I'm all for it.
Yeah, me too. So that was a challenge in its own, though. So, but we had created this relationship, and I was just amazed of how much it crossed over to what I'd written a year before meeting him. So, if you weren't convinced of the power of writing things down, seriously, I've had obviously a number of things happen, but that was one of the most powerful, because I was able to really identify what I wanted next, and I found someone that obviously wanted the same thing or, the similar things. So I'm really grateful that he's come into my life but it's a work. So, we've been together 5 years now and it's a constant work still because, we've got the same issues, the same life. It's a little different because the kids, he's had to take on 3 kids, 2 of them are adults now, but still he's never had children. No. So, and a man that lived on his own for a long time. So you can imagine there was some things. The first time he came into my house with my family and it's like a circus, right? And I said that to him. I said, what are you doing here? I said, this is a circus. I said, you don't have to be here. I do. But what do you do? I'm like, seriously, are you sure? Are you sure you want to sign? He said, yeah, sure. I'm like, you don't know. You really don't know. Luckily for me, he hung around long enough to figure out that it was worthwhile.
And be part of the circus.
Be part of it. He tries to be the ringmaster. But anyway, but it's been a learning curve because also all the things that I'd learnt about my past marriage are things that I think broke down our intimacy. I'm really, really passionate about how to learn to use all those learnings and to create this relationship because it's one thing to meet someone and have that spark and that all those things, which is lovely, but how do you sustain it?
Yes.
That's the $1 million question, right? And I believe it's constant work and working. You got to keep dating each other. You got to keep doing all the special things. What you do, if you do what you did in the beginning, there would be no end. Yet we just forget. We get busy. We think that we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But I've done that
when
before.
We get there, it'll be fine. When this happens, we'll then start putting more time back in for ourselves. When.
Yeah, and because I've rode that pony and it didn't end well, I'm not going to do it again. Yeah. So I'm conscious. I'm awake.
Yes.
And it's great and it's wonderful. And finding someone that is willing to do the work with you, that's really important. So growth is obviously one of my top attributes that I had in there, that I had to have someone that had a growth mindset, the same as me.
Yes. There's so much to that. I love it all. And one thing when you said around the vision, the relationship vision that really stuck out for me is what version you need to be. Because I feel so much about that people might go, oh, well, you just write things down and then magically happen. No, of course not. It's the energy that we're putting in and the work we're putting in, but the part that we take responsibility for ourselves, and then that person attracts the right person. I really believe that. And that growth mindset, it's I've got a lot of thoughts and emotions coming up listening to you speak about this. I'm like, I don't even know how much of it I should go into now, or we edit out or not. But it's just that, for context, I did not explain to anyone on the listening here that I was previously married to your brother. So it's very real for me hearing you talk about like the second marriage and then what you take from the first marriage and what you leave behind and then what you take into a second marriage. But so much of that resonates with me so deeply around the intimacy and the dating and the time and the energy back in. Like I remember meeting a friend. He was on his second, they were both on their second marriages as well when I was working on the Sunshine Coast, and my colleague's husband, and he came in and he said, oh, I'm going to take Megsy out for dinner or whatever he said, and oh, that's nice. And he said, oh yeah, I think she was pregnant, and maybe not that many of my friends had kids yet, so it was a very new concept for me. And he said, she'll always be my number one. Our baby will be the most important person, it's so important, but she'll always be my number one. And I remember at the time thinking, I think you got that muddled up. Like, isn't your baby the number one? And then now I realise, I know what he means. Like your children will always, there's no deeper love than the love for your children. But that relationship needing to be number one, if not, maybe you could argue number one is your relationship with yourself. But really that intimate relationship has to be a priority, because otherwise it won't be the number one relationship.
I agree, and it's a really interesting. I've heard it debated many times on different social media, and some women, if you say that you should always put your partner first, some women will attack you and go, oh, you're a terrible mum or whatever. But the thing is, again, who are you being by putting that relationship first? You're showing your children how they can have an outstanding relationship.
Yeah.
So it's not to discount your love for your kids, of course not. Like you said, because. Like it's a different container even. Like that love is a whole different thing. Like it's hard, you can't even really compare them.
No.
But your And if your kids need to see you, again, it comes back to that comment I said earlier, that you're a person and a woman first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you become a mum doesn't mean you automatically sign up your life to them for the rest of their life.
Which many do.
Most do. In fact, if you don't, you then get criticism for the ones that do.
Yes.
And I'm such a dedicated mum and I'll do anything for my kids. But you've got to have that boundary for yourself as well.
Yes.
And if you do, then that shows them how to do that for them, their own life one day.
Completely. And maybe I was asking you about your Tony year for my own, see, it's okay, like for my own validation, because I would think now if you fast forward and your own children are adults and they've got their own relationships and their kids, and they are at the bottom of their own priority list all of the time, you'd be kicking their butts for it. Like there's no way you'd step, we wouldn't step, no, hey, where's your priority? I imagine it'd be like, right, you go on your date night, I'll babysit, and just kind of encouraging that.
Absolutely.
But for some reason in our society, it was still not quite there yet, where people aren't putting them, and women in particular, at the top or even close to the top of their own priorities, and not at the expense of the love for their children.
No. And like I said, it's
not an either or.
No, it's not. It's not an either or. It's a both.
Yeah.
And it's just about you're allowed to have that intimacy. You're allowed to have that. We're designed to be that. We're designed to be with the companion. We're designed, we're not, but by default we're supposed to, it's okay to have that. And if you don't have it, that's also okay. But it's natural to want, having an intimate partner and someone that you love and share your life with, for me, just amplifies life. So it's like you got someone to witness each other's lives, and that's what's beautiful. Yeah. And that's what I missed when I was single. So, and I knew that I wanted to have it again because I love it. I love being true to one and only. I love all of that thing. I don't think it's old-fashioned or anything like that. I still believe in it, and I love it. I love growing and growing and creating a life for someone.
Yes.
So you do need to give that a priority, and your children, hopefully you teach them to show them that that's okay and it's actually appropriate.
Yes.
And it's okay because they too will do it, and when they do it, you're not going to be that mum that says, oh, you don't put me first as the mum. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to do that to them. We're going to respect their privacy and respect their life. And so we're asking for a little bit of that along the way, depending on their age, of course.
Yes, we're relevant. And the modelling of a loving relationship and a loving home.
Yes.
When people are in those relationships, of course, so some people aren't, and that's totally okay, as you said. But if we think about people who are in intimate relationships and in the home, what are they modelling? What example are kids seeing around the interactions of their parents or their step-parents, whatever the dynamic may be? But that shapes so much. Even just before, I did quotation marks in the air and laughed and said, oh, my daughter does that all the time. Yes, because they model our behaviour, the parts often that we don't want them to. But, that's human, isn't it? So I'm thinking this is probably where the work you're doing now, this is a huge link into what is the role and what is the role modelling, but really how we're showing up as women in particular. So can you tell us about the feminine connection?
Certainly. The feminine connection really started from all the work that I did. And one of the biggest things that I learnt was all about the masculine and feminine energies that reside in us individually first, and how when that becomes out of balance and you're in an intimate situation, if it's out of balance with your partner, how that can affect the intimacy and the relationship. And I really think that was probably the biggest factor to the breakdown of our marriage. So there's lots of things that come into it, but if I was to say that was the linchpin, that would be it. And for me, it was the biggest light bulb moment in all the training that I did was, oh my goodness, that's it. Because, we did the counselling at different times. Gosh, we even did sex therapy. We did everything over the years. And no one ever really discussed that. And when I learned about it, I'm like, oh, I remember a sex therapist telling us we had to go home and role play. I'm like, how's him coming in dressed as a fireman going to, not that I don't like a good fireman outfit, but it was deeper than that. Like the polarity, the attraction was affected because I was in my masculine so often, and him being naturally in his masculine, we were like mates. There was no spark. And when I learnt that and understood it, and because I've witnessed it, and now I've witnessed the opposite, where we maintain that we're aware of that, because I can still go in my masculine, and we need both. As women, we need both. So it's not about right or wrong. It's about balance. And that's what I've learned. So the feminine connection is all about educating about that and how to help women and men, because I've actually worked with men too, but work with women and how to balance it. Yeah. Because in society now, it's obvious that masculine is often rewarded more. The go-getters, you achieve your goals, whether it's in sport and business and achievement and this and that, the pats on the back. It's easy to reward the masculine attributes because and I did a lot of research on this as well, and it's because it's easy to measure. Yes. So it's easy to measure. So masculine qualities are easy to measure because it's normally lineal, it's normally a goal-orientated or results-orientated. Yes. Whereas the feminine is connection and collaboration and feeling and using your intuition and all these amazing strengths that women, not just women because men have got them too, but the feminine qualities are incredibly strong. But because they're not quantifiable as much, particularly in the workplace or say in sport or whatever, it's therefore not rewarded as much. Yes. So we downplay that and sometimes see it as a weakness or a fluffy extra. Yeah. Like, oh, that's nice. Yeah, but it's fluffy extra. It's just, whereas the masculine, oh gosh, and I know because being in the property world and investment world, when you achieve these big objectives, my current business, I just sold a whole heap of properties off, but I amassed just over $9 million worth of property. Wow. So in my personal property. So, I've kicked a lot of doors down, and there've been a lot of masculine energy that went into that. And so there's a lot of achievement and there's a lot of, feel good factors about all those things. Yeah. But there's no good if you're empty inside and you're unfulfilled and you're miserable and you're snapping at your partner and you avoid intimacy with your partner and all these things. Like, what's the point? To me, that's actually failure there. That's not success. Yeah. But balance. So the balance is what I've learned. So really, the last few years is all about learning and researching and understanding it more and more and more, and how then I can educate the women that are similar to me, that have done the same path, or almost a warning for the ones that are way younger. Yes, before it happens. Yeah. Before it, so whoa, guys, I get you. It's wonderful you're kicking all these goals, but hang on, what about this? Yeah. Please don't turn a blind eye because it can bite you. Yeah. And it's a pretty painful bite. Yeah. So how do we get in front of that? How do we start educating, and how do we educate that the breakdown of our intimacy and not wanting to be intimate, like just avoiding it or going to bed late or whatever the things that we do. I've done them all. How do we shift that around? How do we change that? And it's very interesting, the work that I do. And so working with women there's one-on-one coaching. I'm doing webinars. Oh, you are doing podcasts. I'm doing podcasts. Yes. So webinars and also speaking events. Yeah. And that's really. And you're going to be at our Ignite 24. Yes. I can't wait to have you there. So that will be great to be part of the panel, the guest speakers that day. But it's really about that, but really giving tangible programs and systems and things that people can do that they go, okay, I get it, that's me. But what do I do? How do I turn this around? So it's actually breaking down to things that I've done that it's worked for me, research on what other people do because obviously everyone's got their own situation. It's always a little bit different, but the whole theme of self-doubt and not feeling good enough or feeling like you've lost your mojo or who's that playful, sensual vixen that you once were? Where's she gone? She's still there. She's just hidden under responsibility. She's hidden under accountability. She's hidden under judgment. I'm a mum now, I shouldn't do this, or what will the other women say, or what, all this stuff. But what I know to be true is that when she comes back and she's part of your life and you have fun and your radiance and your joy and who you are for others.
Yes.
It's incredible. It's the most incredible shift that you can have. So
It's
I'm very
amazing.
excited about the feminine connection and reaching those people and also working with men too, which was kind of an unexpected thing, although probably shouldn't have been that unexpected, because a lot of women say, well, that's fine, but what about him? What's he going to do?
Yes.
So I started coaching men as well, some one-on-one with
How
them.
are you finding that? What are the differences, I suppose?
It's very different, but again, when you're learning all the work about understanding how men and women operate differently. So when you understand the differences in terms of, for example, men are single focus, women are diffuse awareness. So those two different differences, when you start learning how they are, then coaching or working with them, I change how I am.
Yes.
I can be in my masculine. I can talk to them the way that they need to hear. It's short, sharp, direct. And I can, really talk to them and say that when she does this, it's possible she's meaning this and this and this and this. Because, and I can use my own relationship and I can say, hey, because a lot of the times, like, we just want to be more intimate. How do I get it? They just want more sex, or they just want more this. So it's like, yeah, okay. But there's a whole thing to that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can tell you now, that'll be your polarities out of sync for why she's not feeling attracted to you right at the moment. So how do we shift that? Who do you need to be, mister? How do we need to get you to either pick things up in terms of masculinity? Like, how do you hold yourself?
Yes.
And how do you make her feel safe?
Yes.
Like, how do you do that? And so a lot of the men are confused these days. And that's what I find. They're like, well, I can't do this. She'll get upset if I do that. So they kind of, there's a bit of I think, confusion and don't know what to do. So stuff it, I won't do anything. And of course, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Doesn't really go that way. And so then with the women, I feel like there's this reminder, and this is when I was on your webinar only recently, and just that balance that you can still be ambitious and driven and achieve the goals in your workplace, for an example, but then when you come home and in your own intimacy, your own bedroom, is also just to let that layer of you, or that version of you, but just to be nurtured and just drop back in.
Yes, it is, and it's a shift. So it is for me. The way I do it, and the way that I can coach some women, is to just visualize that you're shifting gears or you're changing hats. So much so that I often joke that I wanted to get 2 different hats and put a pink hat on that said Queen or something on there. So when I wore that means I'm, my masculine has been put to bed for the night.
Yeah.
So she's not needed. She's not required. She's not even wanted. She's not needed at this point in time.
Actually, she's not welcome here.
She's not welcome, correct, And I don't need to be that. She can drop her guard. She can drop her armour. And it's beautiful. And what I know also to be true is that most women, when I say most, and of course there's exceptions, not everyone's the same, but the research says that, maybe 80% of us are still feminine at our core, 20% aren't, and that's obvious. But say it's still as much as 80% are feminine in our core, but we've built so many layers of armour or conditioning or whatever that now, so what we present is not often what we are, but it takes enormous amount of courage and faith and, stripping it all back to go in your feminine. So one of the ways that we can do that is feminine movement. So one of the practices that I do is a thing called kunyin, and it's feminine embodiment movement. So it's just kind of like movement. I guess it's kind of a bit like yoga, but it's not like yoga, but it's much more sensual. It's much slower. It's much more orientated about the music that you're using. The music's very important, the choice of music, the tone, the emotion, and it's designed to move emotion through your body, through the music and through the movements. And it's one of the quickest things that I've ever seen that gets you from your head back into your body.
Yes.
And after like a 45-minute session, you can just be like, everything's slowed down and everything's just, and that's when that femininity can just, is softer.
Yes.
Not weaker, so definitely not weaker, just softer and not as defensive. And So when you show up that way, one, for yourself, it's just much more joyful.
Yes.
It's a joyful way to be. It's much more fun to be. You're more playful. So you'll show up more playful and joyful for your kids, for your colleagues,
Yeah.
for your friends, and obviously your partner. That playfulness comes back. And when that can come back, that is a huge thing for him, because then that will spark his masculine to want to come back and to be the provider and the protector. But if you're doing the providing and the protecting all the time, there's no space for him. So there's multiple things you can do to get back into your feminine. Movement's one of them. Different rituals, whether it's a hot bath and playing, put some candles out, whether it's going for a walk into nature. I'm not talking a power walk, that's masculine. I'm not talking about
a run, not trial hikes and trail runs.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome and great too.
Also good, but just not for the feminine energy.
No, it's not. It's still about achieving a result, whereas feminine's for the experience.
Yes, and just being.
Yeah. So there's lots of different things, and so coaching women to do that and to make it a sort of a ritual, I guess, for themselves. And to show them the benefits and, for why I think it's actually quite crucial.
And we'll share links and show notes and everything for people to find you as well. Obviously, anyone who's at Ignite will get to see you and meet you, but we'll make sure that all those links are there. How do you think it shows up in the workplace and in leadership roles?
I think in leadership roles, and this is an interesting one because I did think about this a lot, even though I say in my career of being properties and running and growing and creating, co-founding housing groups and all these sort of some big things that we've done, and I've always been in some sort of management role and or founder role, I've always thought a joke that I've always very strong on my masculine, which is true, but my feminine also came out a lot naturally, and that would come in the show, and it shows up in collaboration, in care and compassion. So, and in a boardroom. So, for example, is how I would be in a meeting with a group of people talking about a big project would be very different to my business partner.
Yeah.
And together, though, we worked really well. And it wasn't until I discovered all this work that I realised why it worked. Because he would be the analytical, tick the, with all these points we've got to get through and keep us on track. Whereas I was the whole time creating a relationship and a collaboration with the rest of the people in the room. It was just something I naturally did.
Yes.
Because that was just who I was. I always wanted to chat and see how they were and what was going on and how's your wife and how's this happening.
Well, you did start as a hairdresser. That was your first business. So that's kind of came with the territory, right?
Correct. Seem to think it's a busybody, but I actually do care. But what I did is in those rooms, and so what happened then is you build these relationships. So when things don't go well, which in the property world it often didn't, I could ring up and say, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I'd chat and they'd go, yeah, okay, Coles, yeah, no worries. And I'd have a rapport with them. So I think the feminine, its strengths is often dismissed in the workplace and particularly in leadership. Like you've got to be, a bullbuster to be a leader. No, I actually don't agree with that. You can be a leader in that style, but you will be very unpopular.
Yes, yeah.
But if you can balance both of those, and yes, you need a bit of you do need the warrior part of you.
Yeah.
I have different names for my parts and my different, personality traits that come up. And, my Sasha Fierce, I do steal that from Beyonce. So my Sasha Fierce, she takes no prisoners. So if something is needed in the business, I can do that. But what I prefer is to do it in my, my Queen Quinton, Quinton Bryce.
Quinton?
Yeah, Queen Quinton Bryce, so she...
Is Dolly around anymore?
Not very often. Sometimes she's not invited out very often. She's a one-time guest.
It's a bit dangerous.
Trust you to bring up Dolly. Everyone's got a Dolly. Everyone's got a Dolly. It's Dolly
Shirley. Yeah. My Dolly's Shirley. Oh.
When you've had too many drinks,
Way
turns
too many drinks.
Dolly's the sort of person she never gets asked back. Everybody wants to see her, but then they don't invite her back.
Funny that.
That's okay.
Sorry, but Queen Quinton, we want her.
Yeah,
definitely.
Queen Quinton's the one
and Sasha Fierce is welcome too.
You need to know she's there.
Yes.
Because sometimes you need to.
Yeah.
You need to flex that muscle.
Yes.
But what I prefer is to do it in that other way. So you're doing it in a way which is, using your compassion and using a way to connect with the other person and to find out what they need in that situation.
Yeah,
so what's their needs?
The empathy side.
The compassion, the empathy. How do we make it to be a win-win? I would much prefer to be a win-win.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, why not?
Why not?
But that's a feminine trait, see, collaboration, whereas men, it's always, they're very competitive. So masculine, I shouldn't say just men. The masculine is competitive.
Yes.
The feminine is collaborative.
And I love that distinction for those who might not be using the language as often, but it's not about gender, it's about the energy.
Correct.
I watched a video. It's funny how we're having this conversation right now. I saw a video pop up on my feed today, and it was Sarah Blakely, who founded Spanx.
Yes.
And there was a video of her talking about a time she got pulled up on a panel. She was it was early in her career and the only female on the panel. And they were talking about competition and business. And the guy next to her, and there's a video, so you see him talk about, how do you handle the competition? And he literally was saying, we take them down. We are absolutely ruining our competition. And the strongest, fiercest, almost really aggressive language. And he's like, we have to absolutely annihilate our competition. And then they turned to her and said, what do you think? She said, actually, and then in between, she goes, I remember this moment. I just didn't really know if I should say what I really think. Anyway, I did, and then they played her video, and she said, I have to say I disagree. Actually, I can't see why we can't all be successful. I'm not focusing on my competition. What I'm focusing on is how do I provide more value? How do I listen to my customer and truly know what they want and provide more value? And just in there, almost like the toxic masculine that had come out, not the positive, I guess, how would you say, the healthy masculine, but that let's annihilate people. And she's like, no, we don't need to. And obviously she's built an incredibly successful, financially successful business, but just for her to be able to sit there and say no, and I think in her feminine, in her strong, healthy feminine, to say, no, there's enough room for us all, and it's about value and empathy for the customer and wanting to, it was beautiful. It was so beautiful, and just that incredible reminder when we talk about in Illuminate with leadership training, so often people say, can you come and do the soft skills? Can you do the soft skills stuff? And I really refuse that terminology, because in soft skills, what they mean is empathy, communication, how to deliver feedback in a way that isn't going to, scar someone for life. How do we build connection, collaboration? There's nothing soft about those skills.
We call it super skills.
Yeah, exactly. I think we call them the power skills, the human skills, but super skills, not soft skills. And almost where the workplace, I believe there's a shift. I do believe that the paradigm is shifting, and it needs to, but it's not as measurable. It's not as tangible. So until we can completely change what we see, success doesn't have to be so ROI-able all the time.
And it is a balance, because, leading teams of people, as I've done, it's hard too, because when you do show your human side and you build that rapport and you build that relationships with your team, and then it can feel sometimes that, how can I say this? It's very, you got to be careful, because sometimes it can cross over where people go, oh, well, I can do this, and I can get Take
advantage.
Take advantage.
Yeah.
So it is a fine line of, and I think to the, I guess to counter that is to be very clear. To be very clear and to be upfront about your expectations and what's needed, what happens if these aren't met, what happens if you do, and just keep being clear and upfront.
Yes.
And treating people with that, because, business, you do need to hit some goals. You do need to do these things.
Yeah.
To be able to, it can't just all be, you can't just all be in the feminine all the time or the masculine. That's why I say is that balance. And I believe the balance, it's a dance, because it's never the right balance and then you're right. It's every day is different. Every moment's different. How you'll be, like you said, when you get home at night is different to how I'll be in the meeting the next day potentially.
Yes.
It's all different. And so Brett and I, my partner now, fiance.
You.
Hey, woohoo.
Can choose a ring, by the way.
Yeah. He's invited to do that anytime. He and I do business again now. And we actually own cabin parks, so we that's our obviously a commercial investment, and And we're doing this together, and it's an excellent, sort of a cash flow kind of business, and it's been an incredible couple of years that we've been doing that together. But I was actually really scared at first. I'm like, oh no, I said I'd never want to do business again with my partner. Like how do I manage this? How do I manage this and keep my feminine intact? Like, how do I do this? Because I know I slip so easily into my masculine, and I'm very comfortable there.
You're good at it.
Yeah. I'm very comfortable, but I know the result.
Yeah.
And I can be so good at it that I can be a bulldozer. And I don't want to do that. It's not what I want. So we keep communicating still all the time. So different times we have rules now that a certain time of day we don't talk business, unless it's something like burning. Otherwise it's, or we check in and he's like, I've got a work question, and I'm like, nope. She's gone for the day. Nope, she's got to wait till tomorrow. I'm not going to answer any work stuff because I know I've been working on myself, doing cooking, and I'm cooking dinner, and I've got the candles, and I'm getting there, and then that's going to go straight. And it's not to say you can't be in your feminine and do business, but it's logical. I don't want to be in my logical brain.
And also, I mean, having worked with Andy for the last few years as well, it's the role and responsibility conversation there as well. And what I mean is you might be in the candles and the cooking, and then all of a sudden you're switching into almost being the leader or the boss or something, which is not necessarily the role. So you can still be in the feminine and be in business, but it's more like, for us,
I've got to make decisions
when
now.
I was in that mode, or I'd be giving feedback or making decisions, which then felt, it doesn't feel.
Well, making decisions is still, is a masculine trait. So you've got to make decisions and be, committed and explaining it or breaking it down. That's still masculine traits to be that way. So that's why I said, I don't want to be in that space right now.
So often.
So and that's what I'd say to him. And so now if he still say it, like we forget because, you get busy and he'll start speaking. I say, which one do you want?
Yeah.
Do you want fun, soft, beautiful, fluffy, let's play for Kylie? Or do you want, okay, let's get this thing done?
Yes.
And he's like, oh, no, I want playful Kylie. I'm like, okay, then we're not talking about this.
We'll talk tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we do. And I'll talk then, because then I can just be that, and I can then, like I said, it's a switching of hats for me.
Yes.
It's a physical shift.
Yes. It's a good reminder. Good reminder for me. Because it's challenging if you're working together. Also, I think the yin and the yang is a beautiful balance. So it's probably more parts rewarding and powerful than it is challenging, but it's the boundaries and the hats and the timing.
The boundaries is important, and also and recognize if you are a couple that work together or even invest together or whatever you do, is if there's something that doesn't work, then change it. Don't just keep doing it because you should. For example, we do a lot of renovations. So we do splitters and we do properties, and we still do all that on the side as well, just for fun. And
in all your spare time.
Yeah, can't help myself. I look at windows of, real estate offices still all the time. But when we do that, it worked out very quickly that we can't renovate and be on the tools at the same time, because I still like to get in there, and I'm happy to do some painting and happy to do things, not all the time, but sometimes I'm happy to. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. But doing it together, we're both so bossy.
Right.
Yeah. And Brett's very masculine. He's very which is great because he has, but then I can be too. And I kept saying, I'm not your lackey. I'm not. I'm resigned. I'm out. So we just start butting heads. And I'm like, you know what? Do it yourself. And so we were butting heads when we renovate together. So in the end, I'm like, it's okay. I'm just not going to do that with you. Or we do it and we have a separate job, separate in a separate room, and we don't talk about.
There's no crossover.
There's no crossover.
Yeah.
You do you, I do me, and we'll,
see you at the end when these two rooms join. Good luck. And then we'll do the block, and mine's going to be better.
But don't just keep doing it is my point. Like recognise that, hey, we're doing this.
Yes.
And it's because we're both perfectionists, we're both this, and that's great. But don't keep, just don't.
Don't keep doing the same thing and then expect the different result.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like just go, you know what, I'm not, I'm the bad apprentice, you're a bad apprentice. Neither of us want to be an apprentice. We both want to just be
the boss.
And that's okay. But let's just not do that.
Yes.
Or, So it's recognising what's not working and changing it.
Yes. Yeah. So important. So important. If there was one piece of advice you'd want to give I guess you're working with women and men. So if there's a piece of advice you'd love to give someone in an intimate relationship, a tip, something that to take away to wrap up our time here together, what would that be?
To not underestimate the importance of polarity in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the masculine, feminine I'm talking about again. But polarity is the attraction part. And for those that don't understand what that is, it's like two magnets. Mm. So when you put a positive and a positive, two magnets together and the positive ends together, you watch what they do, they repel or push away. It's just a law of attraction. But if you flip one of the magnets over and you put a negative and a positive together, they attract. Mm. So masculine, feminine energies is an energy and it works exactly the same. So understanding that, educating yourself and understanding how that's showing up in your relationship, because if you don't have the attraction, which I'm calling the polarity, if your polarity is out of sync, it's not working, it will, in my opinion, affect your intimacy. Mm. Now, if you're in a relationship and you're both okay with that, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Just stay as you are. But if you know that you want a deeper connection, you longing that deeper connection, you miss the intimacy, or your husband, you know your husband's missing it, please don't ignore it. You know, if you love each other, it's the beautiful thing to do is to work on that polarity. And you know, intimacy is in a very important part. And for men, you know, for the men, I hate to say it, but it's true. It's up there with food, oxygen and sleep. I know. And, you know, we can push back on that as much as we want, but the amount of research I've done, and it's not because they're deviants and they're terrible and all that. It's not that. It's just, it's how they actually get out. It's actually how they get our energy. It's how they fill up with our feminine radiance. It's actually their way of connecting. So, you know, it's a bit like what comes first, the chicken or egg. You know, we want connection and everything to be intimate. They want intimacy to get the connection. So someone has to go first. Yes. But if you work on the polarity, meaning that when you're in your feminine, you will naturally start getting attracted, hence turned on, by his masculine. So give him plenty of room to be your hero. Give him the plenty of room to be that masculine man. And when he does show up and you give him the appreciation for it, it's a turn on. And you'll know it yourself. Every now and then your husband will do something or whatever, and you're like, whoa. You know, hello, where have you been? And that's what it is. That's the polarity. So seek out ways to bring that in, because it's not natural when we live together and work together and all. People think it should just be there all the time. I disagree. I think it's something that we've got to cause that to happen.
Yes,
it's something we work
by design.
On. Correct, and we've got to keep creating it and creating that polarity, that the tension, if you like. And there's ways to do that, and that's also part of what I teach. And it's so fun. It's so fun, and you'd be amazed and how much it makes a difference in our intimacy. It's huge.
It's awesome. I just want to run home and see Andy now.
Get your fireman outfit on.
Kylie, thank you so much for coming and sharing everything. I think there's some beautiful advice, but mostly thank you for sharing your story, the generosity and the courage to come and share what's led you to here and all of the incredible, the ups, the downs and everything in between. It is always a pleasure to spend time with you. I cannot wait for our women to see you at Ignite, and thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me. It's you know, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story, and to hopefully, if someone's out there going through a divorce or a breakdown of some sort or feeling disconnected, that there is actually hope, and to, you know, brighter days are always possible. So to please, I hope that they can draw on some of that, some of my story, and, you know, realise that there's just so much great out there. But yeah, it takes some work.
Thank you. I have no doubt that it will resonate with so many people. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us on the Lead with Courage podcast. We illuminate leadership, and it's our mission to inspire and grow the leaders of today to create a better tomorrow. We hope and trust that this episode has given you some insights and joy to empower you to live your biggest, best life. If you did enjoy the episode, we'd be so grateful for you to rate and share wherever you listen to this podcast. And until next time, go and lead with courage.